Hello. I hope you can hear me, see me, feel me, sense me. I'm here in my living room / studio, living room, studio. And I am thinking about doing my homework. So what I was hoping I could do is, you can't hear me? Is that the fact? Give me a thumbs up, somebody, if you can hear me. No? Thumbs down? Is there such a thing? Is that any better? No. Let me think what else I can do. I can move you closer to me. Come closer to me. Is that any better? Oh, okay. All right, so that was much ado about nothing. Thank you all for telling me that you can hear me. Frederica Wabel. Frederica, I'm sorry that you are unable. Maybe you can read my lips. Anyway, so I don't know about you guys, but I always remember this feeling from school. Do you remember the feeling of like that you had an assignment due but you hadn't done your homework? I had that feeling. I think I still associate it with Sunday night. It always seemed like Sunday night was the time when I would be filled with dread, knowing that there was all this homework that I had planned to do over the weekend, and I hadn't because I was being a kid, being irresponsible. And I think to this day, even though I'm hundreds of years old at this point, and it's been a long time since I went to school, I still have that sense of dread sometimes on Sunday night. So anyway, so I was feeling a little bit that way about this Let's Make a Map homework, because I really loved this course, and I love maps, and I love Nate, and I really have enjoyed this being involved with making these videos and talking about the class. And I've had an idea for a while about what I wanted to make a map of, but I also felt like it was a lot of work. And I would love to make something that I can submit to They Draw and Travel, and which of course means it has to be really, really, really good. And I think just that, thinking about that, has made me apprehensive about getting on with it. So what I thought might be helpful is that if there are any of you on Facebook right now with me who haven't done their homework, maybe we can kind of encourage each other. And if there are some of you who have done your homework, well, you can mock us and sneer derisively at those of us who are slackers. But anyway, I have done a little bit of work. I have done a bit of it, and I thought I would show you what I'm doing so far, and then I could maybe, be motivated to do a bit more. So anyway, let me have a sip of tea first, and then tell you a bit about it. So here's what I was thinking of making my map about. I live right by Washington Square Park. It's a place that I really love. I go there probably 2 or 3 times a day. Why? Because of these 2 wiener dogs that live with me who insist on going out for a walk, all the time, it seems. So I walk them 3 times a day generally. First thing in the morning, at lunchtime, and then at dinner time. And their dinner is actually about 20 minutes from now. They insist on having dinner at 5 o'clock. You know how they can be. So anyway, so I'm always going to this park, and I know it pretty well. And I've been going there for 20 years, and I have like a lot of rich associations with this park. It's like it's the place where I used to take my son when he was little. There's 2 playgrounds in it. It's a place that I associate a lot with my late wife Patty, because she used to go there. She used to be the one who walks the dogs, frankly. But now it's fallen to me while Jenny is at work. Anyway, so this Washington Square Park is really, to me, an interesting park. It's really a slice of New York history. You might remember it from the 1960s, so the era of folk music. There were a lot of musicians that would play in the park, still are. And so I thought it's an interesting park, but it's also a park where virtually every person who comes to New York, every visitor, they all come and they take their picture in front of Washington Square Arch, and they watch the various buskers, and they feed the pigeons, and then they leave. And I know a fair amount about the history of this park, and I also know about the sort of specifics of the park. Like, it has weirdnesses to it, and it's part of New York City, and there's a lot of things in it that I would like to put in the map. So I thought I would make a cool map that if you come to New York and you come to Washington Square Park, which you probably will, then I'll tell you like the obvious things to see, and then maybe I can tell you about some of the less obvious things about it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to another camera that I have, which is right here, and this camera is going to look down at my work surface, and so I can show you a bit about what I'm thinking. Kathy, I'm glad that you think so. That's the thing. Washington Square Park it's 9.5 acres, so it's not an enormous park, and it has been a park since I can tell you the exact date, July 4th, 1826. And that was the day that several things happened. First of all, it was the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. It was also, as it happened, the day that John Adams, I think, both died. Right. So and on that day, they decided to turn it from a cemetery into a park, and they made it into a military parade ground, and it became a military parade ground on July 4th, and they would march around a lot. So there was a bunch of things that were happening in the park that day, and so the park up until that point had been, as I said, had been the cemetery, and Greenwich Village at the time was on the outskirts of New York City. Everybody really lived downtown. I mean, way downtown. By if you've been to New York, where the World Trade Center was. Where Thomas Jefferson, right? Thomas Jefferson and I think it's John Adams, John Quincy Adams. I thought Kelly, Stittenbauer, Wagner. If you're an expert on American history, maybe you can confirm that. But anyway, so everybody lived downtown, and then so of course they buried people, further away, and that's what this was. Greenwich Village was kind of nobody really lived here that many people, and so they had this giant. It's John Adams, right? Thank you, Kelly. So they had this cemetery that they built here, and it was broken up. There was a part of it that was the Jewish cemetery. There was a part of it that was the African American, or at that point the slave cemetery. But then there was also just, I guess, non-Jewish, non-African American people were buried there too. But as it happened, there was also a large yellow fever outbreak in New York in the 17th century, 18th century. And so there were a lot of people that were buried there, and they wrapped them in yellow shrouds to indicate that they had died. Yes, John Adams, not Quincy, right? Yes, I never know what the difference is between them besides the middle name and the fact that one was a brewer, I guess. July 4th, 1826. Yeah. So anyway, so they buried a lot of these people in yellow shrouds, and there were 20,000 people were buried in that park, in that cemetery. And when they turned it into a military parade ground, what they did is they simply put some planks down. I think they just kind of leveled the park, and they left all the tombs underneath the ground. And then they had horses cantering back and forth in military processionals. And these horses, some of their hooves would break through the coffins and kick up bits of yellow shroud. So they decided this wouldn't do, and they dug up a lot of the graves and they moved them to the edges of the park. So those people are still buried there underneath the park. I mean, they didn't move any of the bodies. And in fact, recently they've been doing all this work on the infrastructure around the edges of the park, you know, the sewer mains and the electrical stuff. And they kept digging up bones. This is like 6 months ago. So there's still a lot of activity underneath there. Another thing about this park is also, not to keep going to be morbid, but yes, that was New York City passing by. I live down the street from a firehouse, so that's why invariably when I make videos, you hear fire engines. It's not because my house is burning. Anyway, so they also used to hang people there because it was the cemetery. And there's one particular tree that is in the northwest corner of the park that is called the hanging tree, and that's a tree on which the tree is still there, and supposedly they hung people. There was some story that sounds apocryphal to me, but when Lafayette came to New York in right around the signing of the Declaration of Independence, they allegedly hung a prisoner on every tree in the park. Seems unlikely. Seems difficult. Do I smell smoke? No, I don't. Do I? If you start to see flames or smoke behind me, let me know. Post it here, and I may have to cut this short. As you can see, I'm a master of procrastination, and yes, you'll like the hanging tree. So anyway, what else can I tell you about the park? So, well, let me move to my alternate camera, okay, and I'll show you what I've done so far. Okay. So here we go. A cup of tea. Okay. So, all right. So let me zoom in a bit if I can. Hold on a second, guys. 1 second. Let me just zoom in. All right. So this is from Google. So I went in and I found the park, and it was at an angle because it's not purely north-south. There was an angle, so I kind of moved it around in Photoshop so that it was rectangular. And this is the dimensions of a something to submit to the Draw and Travel. That's the proportions. It's obviously smaller than it should be, but that is actually the right proportion. So you can see it's kind of long and thin. And this is the park, and the streets continue here. So there's West 4th Street that continues on the bottom, Washington Place, Waverly Place, Washington Square North. So I decided that I would save this area here, and I would use this for my my legend and stuff like that. And I'm going to here's a little map that I made of all of Manhattan, and I indicated with a square where it's going to be. And then I'm thinking, this is how I'm doing my compass rose, by the way. I'm doing it in a kind of a modern way, where I'm just taking the N in Washington Square Park, the N, and I'm angling it because north is sort of at an angle, and that's going to be my compass rose. It's going to be pretty simple, I think. I may get more fancy later on, but that's kind of what I'm thinking with that. All right, so that's that. And then, so what I did is I printed out this map, and then I went to the park, and I walked very slowly all the way around it, and I marked down things that weren't on Google's map, but that I knew needed to be represented. So let me just tell you what some of them are. So for instance, there's a largish playground here, and then there's a smallish playground there. That's Washington Square Arch. And then I indicated that there were tourists, because there's always tourists standing in front of Washington Square Arch having their picture taken. You know, there are always thousands of them there. So I figured I'm going to have to do something to represent like key place for tourists. And then there's a flagpole right there. So I'm going to do something with the flagpole. There's a guy who does sand art a lot of the time right in front of the arch. I don't know if I'll bother with that. I don't particularly like his art, to be honest with you, but that's neither here nor there. This is a statue of Garibaldi. That's a statue. Garibaldi was a 19th century Italian folk hero, and there's a statue of him there. So I'm going to be doing some representation of that. There's an old tree here that I really like, and I'm going to do some representation of that. This is a let's see, what is this? This is like a little kind of stage that musicians perform on, and there's often skateboarders. Skateboarders are always like going up and down this. I want to do something to do with a skateboard. Then this is the circle here is around the fountain. This is kind of the center of the park, and there's all kinds of stuff that goes on here. Like there's different kinds of carts that sell food, hot dogs, crepes, ice cream. There's a bunch of acrobatic sort of street performers who often perform there. There's a fountain in the middle, of course. There's a guy who sells peanuts here. There's a guy who does like a thing with bubbles, you know, he blows giant bubbles. There's something here, but I can't read my handwriting, so I don't know what that is. So anyway, so I've got to do a bunch of stuff around this centerpiece. And then there's acrobats that come and they do this. It's a new thing, which is what do I call it? It's like a combination of acrobatic yoga, where like one person holds another person up in the air. Sometimes they do it topless, which is kind of disturbing, particularly in a public park. But you know, it's annoying. So anyway, Karina, I'm sorry to hear that you're having a terrible week. You know, are you going to not do your homework? I mean, I have to be honest with you. This is a very big project. I think it's a big project. I mean, Kosha managed to knock it out in a day or two because she's a goddess. But you know, for mere mortals like you and me, I think this can take some time. You know, I think that's one of the things. Let me just switch to the other camera for a second. Yes, we are procrastinating people. It's true, Rachel. You know, going back to what I was saying, I think too often at sketchbook school, you know, in the sort of push to get us to do stuff, we give assignments and then you have like 2 or 3 days to do them. And sometimes I realize it can be oppressive. It can be, you know, you can pick, and it can mount up, and you can start to feel like, oh no, I didn't do it all. And that, I think, goes back to what I was saying before about my school days, you know, the memories of like not doing your homework on time, and you know, and not wanting to be the one person who didn't get it done, and sort of scrambling. So I don't know if some of you have that feeling, or sometimes you have that feeling. I sometimes have it, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm just like fired up and I want to do it, and the decks are cleared, and here I go. I have the added burden, as does Kosha, that when we do homework, we also have to make videos about it. So that takes about 8 times as long, but it's still, you know, it's still fun to do. But you know, my point is just that a project like this, and this is something that we've been talking about at behind the scenes at Sketchbook School, is to think about courses and projects that maybe are designed to spend a little bit more time on. You know, the idea is that maybe rather than just filling a page in your sketchbook, which is great, and we should all do that on a regular basis, maybe sometimes it is okay for us to think about, you know, taking a moment, or taking a longer moment to kind of develop an idea, and to polish a piece, and to maybe take it from one sketchbook into something else. And maybe that's also the domain of sketchbooks. Well, maybe that's something that we should be talking about from time to time. And I think Let's Make a Map is an example of that. So anyway, people need Patty needs the weekend to work. Kimberly says, I absolutely hate falling behind. Sometimes something that happens, but I'm also familiar with the desire to do the next thing, and so there are weeks when I love having a new assignment each day. Yeah, it's a mixed bag, and we're dealing with lots of different people with lots of different lives. We also change things around. Do you remember we used to launch classes on a Friday, and then now we launch them on a Monday? So when we did it on a Friday, you had till the following Friday to do it, and now we've launched them on a Monday. And there's a reason that we did that. And I think the reason was that we thought if as Kathy says, sometimes you need time to percolate. So I think the switch to Monday, the idea was what cat? I don't have a cat. Make a map of all the places the cat went to. That's interesting. Anyway, I'm sorry. So part of the reason we started on a Monday was because we thought if people were having some kind of an issue, technical problem, or it's the beginning of a class, we would be around through the week. I mean, we're here 7 days a week, but it would be nicer. And also for some of the other people who we use to help us do stuff, if we could do it during the week rather than saying, oh no, well, we have all weekend because we've just launched on Friday. So yeah, so Monday, so we switched to Monday, and that's kind of the way it is. This is a school, after all. School does not start on Friday. School starts on Monday, and then you have the weekend to feel bad about not doing your homework. There you go. I knew there was a logic to it. Anyway, so let me go back. Oh yes, Karina's cat, of course. Yes. Let me go back to this other camera. Okay, so what else do I have here? So then here's a small dog run. It's usually where we take our dogs. There's a large dog run there. There's some cherry trees here. There's a bathroom there. And there's different kinds of musicians that play in different places. Like their jazz musicians generally play here. Kind of folk musicians and guys who do Beatles songs and other chronic things like that are over here. This is a nice park to read in, this part of the park. There's a bunch of people who always sunbathe over here. Guys play frisbee here. You often see groups of students from NYU getting together. They sit in a group with like their teaching assistant or the grad student, and they talk there. This is another statue of a guy named Hawley who invented the Bessemer steel process for making stainless steel. For some reason, there's a statue of him there. So only 3 people have their statues in Washington Square Park. George Washington, who's at the arch, Garibaldi, and this guy named Hawley. That's it. It's a beautiful park. These statues have been here for over a century, and these 3 people are commemorated. I don't understand it either. There's a guy here who, I guess he feeds pigeons a lot, and he'll sit on this park bench, and he'll have like 100 pigeons land on him, which to me is just kind of revolting. I mean, I don't know. Pigeons, the idea of their claws sort of sitting all over you, it's kind of disgusting. Anyway, there's a guy who's a marionette guy over here. There's a play hill, which is like a special hill with like a jungle gym over here. And then on both of these corners, there are chess tables. If any of you ever took storytelling, you'll remember Melanie drew in this, drew chess players over here. So there's chess players over here. There's chess tables over here. Here's the thing. These chess tables are full of like chess hustlers. So like guys who you basically pay to play chess with them, and they give chess lessons. Over here is another bunch of chess tables, and it's surrounded with a bunch of guys who basically are there to sell loose joints. I think they'll sell other stuff too, and every so often the cops have kind of hustled them out of there. But yeah, so that's like the one kind of disreputable part of Washington Square Park is that corner. So if you come to New York and you're interested in buying some drugs, go right there. That's the hanging tree, appropriately right over this kind of drug chess table. Hanging tree. Anyway, so that was that part of it. And then, what else? So then I made a list here. So here's this list that I've made of various other things that I want to put in here. There's a piano. There's actually sometimes 3 pianos in Washington Square Park. 2 are played by guys who roll them in and play them, and one has just been sitting there over here for about a month now, covered with paint and just abandoned. There's a guy who's a wizard, fortune-telling wizard. There's the skateboarders. There's what I call the troll tree, which is this thing over here. There's ice cream trucks here and here. So I've got to do those ice cream trucks. And then here's a list of the various things that I was thinking of, miscellaneous things. Tourists, musicians, homeless people, artists. They shoot a lot of movies in the park. They were shooting one yesterday. Dogs, big and small, pigeons, squirrels. There's a guy who walks around with a big sign that says free hugs, and surprisingly a lot of people take him up on it. Skateboards. There's NYU film school students always in there, and there's the chess stuff. So, and what I'm thinking is I am going to do this whole thing. I'm going to do a bunch of drawings, and then I'm going to combine it probably either in Illustrator, the way Nate does, or maybe in Photoshop. Photoshop would be kind of the cowardly way out, and I'm much better at Photoshop. Illustrator is always kind of scary, but Illustrator also makes things much cleaner looking. So let me just go back to this other camera a second and tell you something. So, you know, I have published a bunch of books, and a lot of them I've made myself. I mean, somebody else has published them, but I've kind of designed them and put them together. And a lot of times they're from my sketchbooks, but I have to kind of combine things. Oh yes, Rachel, yes, there's the fountain right in the middle. There's the fountain. I'm definitely going to do the fountain. But anyway, so I end up taking stuff out of my sketchbooks and sometimes recombining them, cleaning them up, changing the dimensions of them, moving them around, taking out, you know, the sort of people's phone numbers and rather too frank opinions about stuff that I might have written in my sketchbook and I may not want to have in Barnes & Noble. Anyway, so what I do is I make pieces. So I do this when I do illustration jobs. I often have to do this as well because, frankly, when you're an illustrator for hire, it's very different than just doing a page in your sketchbook because invariably you have specifications that the editors give you. You have changes you have to make to change the colors of things, to change the proportions, to move stuff around. So it's easier to make it in Photoshop, and a lot of times I'll end up making things that have 50 layers. I don't know if you guys use Photoshop a lot. We try to avoid talking about it in sketchbook school, honestly, because we don't want to enslave people with Photoshop and force them to do it. But you know, if you do things as an illustrator, or if you do something like this for They Draw and Travel, you might want to do it that way. I mean, as you saw from Kosha, if you watch Kosha's study hall video, she did her thing by hand and hand lettered the whole thing and did it the perfect size, and that was great. She didn't really need to adjust it, but I decided that I probably would. So I want to show you a couple things I'm going to do. So one thing I'm thinking of is this park is all green, right? It's all grass and trees. And so I was thinking that that's what I wanted to make them. I wanted to make it feel very lush. And then on top of it, I wanted to carve up the space with lines that represented all the pathways that cut through it. And then on top of that, I was going to put all my little characters. So some of the characters are going to be representing things like food or landmarks. So I'll have my key down the side, where I'll say these are these are good places for tourists to go, or these are places where dogs go, or these are places where you can find pigeons or squirrels. So I'll kind of mark that. But then there might be other things that are more just little bits of illustration. You saw that Nate does that a lot. You know, he'll have like a guy riding a bike sort of sitting on top of a map. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily a place to ride bikes. It just means it's a nice piece of illustration again. So what I'm thinking is I'll have things like the arch and the statues and some other things that I'll just kind of put on top of the map. So I'm starting by drawing a bunch of the little characters, and I'll show those to you in a second. But first I thought I would just create some pieces of green watercolor that I could then put into Photoshop and kind of combine and layer maybe. And I could even adjust the colors, so I could have one piece and maybe adjust the color so I could use it in a bunch of different ways. So I'll just show you quickly how I'm going to do that and what tools I'm going to use for it. So let's go to that. This is a cup of tea, and it's an essential element in anything that I make. All right. So I'm going to use watercolor paper. That's what this is. It's watercolor paper. It's got two different textures to it. It's not particularly good watercolor paper. It's it's just something that I happen to have at hand. This is my palette, plastic palette, and then I'm going to be using these things. These are Doc Martens Radiant Concentrated Watercolors. I'm fortunate to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So there's 14 in a box, and I have 4 of these, so I have close to 100. No, Ursula, that's a very good idea. Ursula is working on her map while she's watching. I wholly and wholeheartedly congratulate you for doing that. It's a great idea. The rest of you, what are you doing? Sitting around? Sitting around watching Facebook videos? Come on. Get out your PH Martins and let's get to work. So these are amazing. These are really cool. And I have hundreds of colors of them, as I said. So they're quite expensive if you buy as many as I did, but they're really great, and I've used them many times. So, and they're all beautiful colors, and they're really super bright. The thing about them is they are they're dyes almost. They're very concentrated. So, so I'm going to start by taking this ice green, and I'm just going to put. It has a little dropper. I'm just going to put a little color there, and I'm going to take some grass green, another color. I'm going to put that there, and I think maybe I'll take this ice yellow. Put that there. All right. So then I'm going to take some water. I'm going to take this gigantic fat brush. It's called the Mega Brush from Blick. It's not a very good watercolor brush, but it's mega. It's huge. So I'm just going to put down some. Ooh, look at that! You see? See, this is typical of me. There's something on this brush, and now I have a bit of yellow here. It actually doesn't really matter because it's all going into Photoshop, so I can fix it. And these are all cool serendipitous elements. Take a little bit of the green, and I'm just going to float it into this water. You can't really tell, I don't think, how beautifully bright this color is. It's amazing. So here I'm putting a little bit more of this wet, and I'm going to add just another bit of a darker green. All I want is these bits of texture, because I'm going to scan all this stuff, and I just want bits of texture that I can use. I'll take a little bit of this yellow and float some green in there. So this is a typical part of my process, is just to make kind of slathers of watercolor like this, and then to tweak them later on in Photoshop and to make stuff out of them and to blow them up really big and zoom in on them. I've had pieces of watercolor that I've sent out to a service bureau, where you get a professional to scan it for you, and am I still frozen? Somebody give me a thumbs up if I'm not frozen. Maybe I am frozen. Okay. So that's one piece of paper, and then I'm going to take another one, set that aside to dry, set another one. Okay, good. Thank you all. And now I'm going to try and. So my idea is that I'm going to break up portions of my map into different kind of parts, different textures, and then layer them, combine them, fiddle around with them. For the fun of it, salt. Give it a different texture. All right. Okay, so I'm setting these things aside now. Let them dry. And is that clear? Does it just seem stupid what I'm doing? Probably is. But it's I have dozens and dozens and dozens of examples of these like little chunks of pieces of watercolors. It isn't just a computer thing. In other words, you could do, this is essentially a kind of collaging that I'm doing. So I could actually let those pieces dry and then cut them up, with an X-Acto knife and collage this whole map, like make the whole park into sort of like a patchwork quilt of different chunks of green. Might be a thing to do. I might even consider doing that. I don't know. Anyway, let me just quickly take you through my drawings so you can see that and how I'm doing those. So I'm drawing over and over again because I don't really know whether this is going to work. I mean, whether any one of them is going to work. But so I drew some palettes because I wanted to represent that there's a couple places where artists work. And then I drew, these are for the chess corners. I just drew lots of different chess pieces. It's really quite hard to draw a knight effectively. As you can see, I had lots of different versions of him. So my thought is, with all these drawings, I'm going to scan them, I'm going to bring them into Illustrator, and then I'll probably either color them there. I might color them just in a kind of Photoshop looking way, just like pure solid color, kind of the way Nate does a lot of his stuff, just solid color. And then I might, that way I think they'll stand out from this watercolor background, or possibly I could color them with watercolors as well. Again, just doing a post-production. So anyway, that's my bits of chess things. Here are my dogs. So I've drawn lots of different kinds of dogs for the dog park areas. Kind of a fat corgi lying here, some sort of weird, surprise-looking greyhound, a wiener dog, of course, a really obese, depressed-looking pug, and various other dogs. So those are bits and pieces. So I just need to have a couple of dogs to represent the dog park. Again, I just draw a lot of them until I kind of feel like there's some that are good. Guitars are really hard for me to draw to get the proportions right, so I did lots of different ones, and as you can see, some of them were completely off. And the same with the trumpet. I wanted to represent the jazz area with trumpet, so I just had to draw it over and over again to get it right, to get the bell of the trumpet right. It was really, really a drag. So, that. Ice cream. I hadn't really thought about how many ways there are to make an ice cream cone. I don't know if you can think of any other ones that I missed. Anyway, hot dogs. It seems like you have to have that kind of thing of mustard or ketchup, and you have to have it. Even though you never actually do that with mustard or ketchup, it's just a way, it seems like a rule when you draw a hot dog. And then these are cameras, none of which I'm terribly happy with, but I wanted to have a camera to kind of represent the tourist area, like have your picture taken there. I may have to do some more of those. Let me just do one right now. Using here a pin. Love this pen. Pin, 0.3. So here's camera's essentially a rectangle, and then it has a big circle that is the lens. I don't want it to be too complicated because it's probably going to end up quite small. And then it usually has this sort of little housing, and then it has like the little shutter release. Maybe it has some numbers on it, and then even though cameras aren't really like this anymore, I like to have that kind of thing where this would be dark and this. And I've so often when I'm drawing these, I've wanted to color it in, you know, but I'm restraining myself because I really want to do that when I'm done with the computer. So that's sort of the idea. Camera. Squirrels. So I started drawing squirrels. Bad squirrel. That's cute, kind of getting ready to run squirrel. And then as I was drawing squirrels, I thought, well, you know, actually there are rats in the park as well. So I'm going to draw rats. Rat, rat, rat. Rat is kind of a squirrel with a naked tail. So there you have it. A cute, playful looking rat. All right, Jane, go and eat something. It's far more important. Or bring a sandwich and hang out with me while you eat. I don't care. Just don't eat loudly. Okay. The arch. I wanted to make it kind of dramatic, as if you're looking at it from below, because it's probably going to be the biggest thing. And I've drawn this arch many times, and I'm not 100% pleased with this, but it's something. Garibaldi. So this is Garibaldi on his statue. Tough to draw in a really simple way, but I tried to just make him really simple, because again, he's probably going to be this size when I'm done, this size. That is the guy who I told you invented the Bessemer, the guy who's going to be over here, Holly, invented the Bessemer stainless steel process. That's going to be his statue. He has quite nice hair, as I seem to remember, and a big overcoat, but he's just a bust. And then pigeons, a variety of different pigeons from different angles. Rachel, reload your page. Just reload the browser, and you'll be fine. Skateboards. Again, a really surprisingly difficult thing. Surprisingly difficult thing to do. So many different angles, different ways of doing it. They kind of have a thing that goes up at the back, so I've just drawn lots of different versions. I don't really know. Pianos. Again, trying to really boil it down, like sort of a grand piano or a piano with a lid up, you know. But then I got into here, like, do I want to draw the whole thing with a foot pedal? I don't know. I'm not sure. The piano may have to just go. I think it's just too complicated a thing for this map. Hanging corner, pretty easy thing to draw. And then the free hugs dude. I tried him once. I was pretty happy with it. That kind of captures who that guy is. And when I throw some color onto him, I think he'll be good. So what else I was thinking? I was thinking that I might want to figure out how to draw a ghost. Because with all those dead people that I mentioned that are there, I feel like I got to have a ghost in there, right? So there's a bunch of different ways of drawing a ghost. I'm just kind of trying to make a sort of a cute one. I could draw an upright piano, right? An upright piano is sort of something like that, right? It has like legs, and then the back part comes down, and it has a pedal or two. That's the basic idea, right? And then I guess I could put in the keys there, and then like the thing with sheet music. I don't know. Maybe. The funny thing is, though, that a lot of those pianos are actually, they are grand pianos, which is really remarkable. But yes, it's true. I could just do, I could just do that. I'm not quite sure how piano works, but it's something along those lines. And just do something that represents the keyboard. Thank you for that suggestion, Allie. That's a good idea. So I could do something along those lines. I'll see. But I've still got to figure out this the business of the ghost. I don't know that I want to do a tombstone, actually, Susan, because there aren't really any tombstones. There's just these ghosts that are hanging around of the 20,000 people who have been, had their thing moved around. So there'll be some guy like that. I can just have them sort of floating around, or maybe it has to be more miserable looking. What else? Or there could be this sort of Pac-Man kind of ghost too, right? Something like that. How do you make sure that your lines do not get too thick when you shrink the drawings digitally? It's actually the opposite. It's that they get too thin, right? So, well, here's one thing: is if I do this in Illustrator, with Illustrator I can just stroke the whole thing, and then I can change the stroke. So as I make it smaller, I can change the relationship. So that is an option for me. I'll have to see. I mean, I'm frankly a bit worried about. I've drawn all these drawings with basically the same size pen, and then I'm going to make them different sizes, and they're going to have different weights. So I do have to consider that and think about how that's going to work out. We will see. So as you can see, despite my procrastination, I think I'm legitimate in having to think of a lot of different elements and having to think of some technical things, how to figure these things out. What's the best way to draw these things, to represent them? Because I also want to make sure that when they're on the map, that you can immediately tell what they are. So they can't be too detailed if they're small. And yeah, I think that's kind of it for now. I think I'm going to start scanning some of these things and plopping them in. Maybe I'll share one of those things with you. So it sounds like some of you guys have actually been working on your maps. That's great to see. And certainly I know that some people have been uploading their stuff to the classroom already. That's fantastic. I think it would be cool to share work in progress, and some people have been doing that. And and of course Kosha, being the procrastinator that she is, has not only finished her map, not only made a study hall video of it, not only uploaded it to class, but has also sent it to They Draw and Travel and had it accepted. So anyway, Allison, I'm glad that I could be helpful to you. Illustrator is. Let me tell you a bit about Illustrator and my relationship with it. I first used a thing called Illustrator 88. Why was it called 88? Because it came out in 1988. So that's when I first started fiddling with it, and it was really a nightmare in those days. And there were so many illustrators who did really great things with it, and they did amazing things with gradations, and it was just really amazing. And now increasingly it's gotten easier to use in the sense that you can scan things in, and then it will automatically create the outlines for you. But it's still, I find it tricky. But it does give you very clean lines, which can sometimes seem artificial. I think people who are really good at Illustrator can do stuff with it and you have no idea that it was Illustrator. It can look completely organic. That's not my ability, but it is a great way to clean things up. And then if you bring them back into Photoshop, they are sharper. Photoshop can be, certainly when you make things different sizes, blow them up, it screws up the resolution. And if you layer a bunch of different things of different sizes and then you have them all in a file that's the same resolution, it definitely gets funky. It's definitely tough. Judy, so Judy, you're scanning stuff. What are you going to do with them once you scan them? I'd like to know that. Salami did. I like that, Jane. Salami did. There's a lot of discussion about food here. Maybe it's because it's 5:20. Speaking of which, Tim and Joe are being very patient. They've just had haircuts. Let me just grab one of them for you so you can see. Come over here. Come here. Come here, good dog. Come here, good dog. Come on. Come on. Come on. All right. Here's Joe. As you can see, he just had what is called a summer cut. So he's a long-haired dachshund, but he had this summer cut, so he feels so smooth and very nice. He's also survived a dental procedure, and but his teeth, look at how nice and white they are now. Beautiful, right? So Judy, so you're placing them in a file, the correct size, and then laying them in place. Okay, but presumably in Photoshop. So that's good. So there you go. Are you ready for dinner? All right, guys. Thanks very much for hanging out with me. Thanks for incentivizing me to get some of this stuff done, and I will share more with you in the future. Facebook Lives are fun. We've also been talking about doing YouTube Lives. We just did a test of that, and in some ways we kind of like it better. And we also like the fact that it's not. Thanks very much. That it's not just in the confines of Facebook, which not everybody loves. You guys obviously do. You're here. But so we might do some YouTube ones, and if we do, we will let you know about them, of course. Thanks very much, and have a lovely evening, or morning, or dinner, or whatever it is you're doing, wherever you are. I'm going to get back to feeding hounds. Good night.